Greetings to all, my name is Grudar and I'm back from a weekend of judging. Now this is gonna be a video about a bunch of stuff. So if you're just here for something specific, look in the description below, there's gonna be timestamps for everything. At least I hope so, if I don't forget. So let's get into it. First I wanted to say it was exhausting. It was a new experience to me. It's the first time I actually judged a competitive event, and if you're not familiar with Magic, there's 3 rules enforcement levels. Now, usually you'll be playing at regular. Regular is like Friday night Magic, it's draft, it's a casual-ish environment, fun, it's forgiving if you make a mistake, and it's not really punishing. Competitive is really competitive. It's where you will actually get punished for your mistakes. You'll actually get warnings, you'll actually get game losses if you make some serious mistakes. And it was my first time judging one of those. I've played in them before, but never judged. It was interesting, especially Friday evening was vintage. Now vintage is basically every card. You get to play with every card. There are some cards you only get to play one of, and there's some banned, but those are just because they force you to give your opponent actual cards from your collection, which is not good. And I've never played, never watched, never judged vintage before, never done competitive before, and the other judge wasn't there. He was 2 hours late, so I had to do everything myself, and I tried. We got through it. There were some hiccups. It's fine. In the end, everything did go well, so that's just great. Now, I did learn a lot of stuff from it. I learned that there were some expensive decks. Like, there were decks 10,000 euros. There were like decks that cost 4,000, 10,000, maybe even more. Some cost less, but it was the most expensive cards I've ever seen in Magic. So that was pretty interesting. Now, Saturday, there were 2 other judges, way more experienced than I am. They both went to some giant events. There were somewhat more than 70 people on this one. And it was big. They knew so much more than me. They were so much more experienced. They were like, oh yeah, now we're gonna do this, now you're gonna post that there, you're gonna hang these pairings there, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do what you're asking me and answer some judge calls. That was pretty funny. It was Legacy, by the way. It was Legacy, also something I've never judged or played before, but the cards make more sense. The text on the cards makes more sense, so that's a lot easier to understand. And then later in the evening, I also learned a whole lot by judging that. Like, these 2 judges, they really had some interesting knowledge, some interesting stuff to tell me. Now, if there's another competitive event, I'll be much more prepared and I'll know how everything works. And then later in the evening, there was a small old school event where you only get to play cards from the first few years of Magic. That was crazy. Also, just decks of huge value, triple sleeved, and it was so cool. it was so cool to see like these 20-plus-year-old cards of such value and so overpowered. It was interesting. It was interesting. And also some interesting words on these cards. Now, Sunday, there was a lot less people than expected. And that's obviously a real shame for the organizers, but we were 3 judges, there was only like 50 people, and I just decided, okay, I'm not needed here. I'm just gonna go home, let you do your thing, and I'll just go home and relax, cause I didn't get a lot of sleep that weekend. I'll just go home, play some games, relax, let my mind have some rest, and I did that. It worked. The 2 judges didn't have any problems doing the event with the 2 of them. So that was great. That was great. And then I was at home, watched some videos from the people over at Go Play Gaming and some other YouTubers, because that's what I do. I watch videos, watch my own videos as well, because I'm weird like that. yeah. That's a description of the weekend. Now, into the other parts. I made some notes. On how I was struggling to survive the weekend, because I was just so mentally and physically exhausted that it was hard. It was just hard. And I'll just start with doing some examples of judge calls I had. Now, I'm not gonna go over all of them, I'm just gonna go give some examples. Now, first, some examples of mistakes they made. Oof, there was a bunch of mistakes. I'm gonna try to choose some interesting ones. For example, active player costs Thought Not Seer. Now, Thought Not Seer, displayed right here on the screen, or right here, I don't know. Editing me will choose that. Using Workshop and another land that produces 2 mana only for Eldrazi spells. I'll also display that on the screen. I don't know the name by heart, but that's fine. And he casts it. It enters the battlefield. The opponent shows his hand. And then the opponent suddenly notices, oh, wait, you can't use Workshop to pay for that land, to pay for Thought Not Seer. And that's when they call me. Now, it was pretty clear it was an honest mistake. There wasn't really a reason to do that at that moment. It was just, he could have even cast it not using that land. But it was more of a, oh yeah, that was just stupid. I tapped the wrong thing. And the problem is, he already saw the opponent's hand. That's when I said, oof, I haven't really encountered this before, especially since I've never judged competitive before, which is something important. I'm not familiar with the IPG, Infraction Policy Guide, which is the document where it says what penalties to give in which cases. Now, I just received a phone call, sorry. This was actually a gameplay error, game rule violation, which is something to use for incorrect costs paid, like someone pays 3 mana and 1 black for a spell that costs 2 mana and 2 black, like Damnation. So that's when you hand these out. You give him a warning, you write down a little description, and that's that. They have a warning. Now, if it was intentional, then that would have been cheating. But cheating is a bit more heavy. Like, you will be disqualified if you're intentionally cheating and it's actually provable, or just it's highly unlikely that it was unintentional. Now, that's hard to prove, so usually you'll just go with a warning, but sometimes it's just, okay, yeah, you're doing this intentionally. And that's when you would give a disqualification. Now another simple one. The active player controls necropotence, I don't know how to pronounce that name. But he has it. He starts his turn, he untaps. He draws a card. Now, the card says, skip your draw step. So that means you won't actually draw a card at the start of your turn. Now, luckily enough, the non-active player, his opponent, quickly said, "Ho, stop it right there. You can't draw cards right now." When he was still holding the card separately, even though it touched his hand, the opponent could still tell, yeah, it's exactly that card. It's that one, guaranteed. Now, what you want to do then is just a gameplay error, looking at extra cards. He saw a card he shouldn't have seen, and he'll shuffle it back into his deck, into the unknown part of his deck, because if he's tried, so if he looked at the bottom cards of your library, say, then those bottom cards would still be there and he'd shuffle the rest of his deck. Now, and he gets a warning. Now, if it wasn't seen at that time, and he actually drew a card before doing anything else, and it was just in his hand right there, then it would have been like this following case. The active player uses his fetch land, sacrifices it, searches his library for a land card, puts it onto the battlefield, then shuffles his library. The opponent shuffles his library back, puts his library down, and he draws a card. Now that's not what you do with a fetch land. The problem here is the active player thought they were resolving Ponder, which is basically after you've shuffled your library, you will draw a card. That's not what happened here. Now, the error was caught only after the card was placed into the active player's hand, and his hand was not in the same order anymore. Now, there are several ways of fixing this. I believe in this case, the opponent chose a card from the active player's hand at random, and that one was shuffled back into the library. Into the unknown part of the library, which was the entire library because it was just shuffled. And that's also just a warning. So these are all minor infractions that can be fixed by something fairly simple. Now here's a judge call that's quite different from the others. The non-active player casts Lightning Bolt targeting the active player's 2/3 Tarmogoyf. Now, there was no instant in any player's graveyard, and the non-active player realizes it and says, "Oh, that was a mistake, I shouldn't have cast that spell." But the problem is, everything else has been resolved already. I mean, the spell has been cast, nothing was cast in response, and then the player realizes, oh, that was a mistake. Now what happens then is nothing. He casts it on the Tarmogoyf, deals 3 damage, the Tarmogoyf becomes a 3/4. He casts a lightning bolt for nothing. And that's just a shame. It would have been different in regular rules enforcement level, which is an example to show you the differences. But it's not like that in competitive. He cast a spell. Now here's some other judge calls that did not feature mistakes. Such as, I gotta look at my list. Non-active player controls Trinisphere. Active player has 2 untapped lands and wants to cast a Dismember. Now, Phyrexian mana is not quite the same as normal mana, but it does function the same way, even if you pay it with 2 life. So let's say this situation, the active player would actually be able to cast the Dismember when paying just 1 mana and 4 life. And to many players this would be unexpected. I will happily admit that I was not sure about this interaction. Phyrexian mana is weird. Now another example is, oh dear, where did I write all this stuff down? A Grizzlebrand with an animate dead attached to it. So that means it's a 6/7 Grizzlebrand. And the opponent plays Phantasmal Image, targeting the Grizzlebrand, or choosing the Grizzlebrand. What does this become? Simple answer, it becomes the Grizzlebrand. Copying effects will only copy exactly the card, and will not copy anything attached to it, any effects that apply to it with instants or sorceries, or enchantments. It's just the card. Another one, someone casts Reanimate, targeting Keranos, the god of storms, and yeah, it's no longer a creature as long as it's on the battlefield, unless you have enough devotion, but you know what I mean. And the question is, will you lose life? Yes. Yes, you will, because in every zone, except for the battlefield, it is still a creature. And the Reanimate will check those characteristics before the god of storms actually hit the battlefield. So you will lose life. I believe in this case it's 4 life. Just look at the cards on the screen. So now that the weekend's over, I'm just gonna go back to recording some more videos, maybe some more Magic videos, gonna record some more gameplay videos, whatever. I'm gonna record more. It's what I've been doing the last 6 months. I'm not gonna stop doing it. I enjoy this way too much. So, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, I will see you when I see you, which is maybe the next time I'm doing this again.